Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julio Crupia. I'm the head of operational excellence and organizational capabilities for RICO Latin America division. And my talking was about business transformation. Our company, well, is still moving from a product-centric company into a services-led company.
I'm Stephen Wilson, Managing Partner with Wilson Paramount Company, and I talked about growth in the age of complexity, silos of growth.
Hi, I'm Matt Morgan. I talked about business transformation lessons from Bridgewater Associates, which is an investment management company outside of New York, where I've been working the past 5 years.
My name is Kevin Goldsmith. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Avo in Seattle. I talked about changes that we are making at Avo to be more agile and nimble.
Zach Jacobson, I'm with eBay, Business Excellence and Customer Insights. And I spoke about some techniques you can use to cut through the tension between ops excellence and innovation.
And my name is Zol Peshman. I'm Vice President at CAP IT, and I talked about agility for global teams using visual management and a digital visual management solution.
All right, so gentlemen, the first question that we have for you today are, what are 2 things that you do as a leader to enhance your organizational agility? So do you want to start at that end, or you want to start anywhere? It's up to you. We'll let Julio start. He's here right next to me.
Okay, well, first, I think that you have to be a role model. And if you talk about agility, you need to show real examples on real basis, on daily basis, of what you are doing, and how is it related to agility.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of things, and I think one thing ties back to my discussion earlier, which is I think a lot of times your agility, your ability to adapt to new environments is slowed down by the complexity of your business. So really understanding that can be a real sort of albatross around your neck. I think in terms of more of an operational excellence perspective, one thing we've seen, we've done a lot of work around Lean Six Sigma and then understanding how to actually drive, when a lot of projects often don't add up to anything. So how do you make sure you're actually working the right levers? And I think our experience there is really around making sure you are anchoring at the highest level value chain and understanding what those key issues, the breakdowns across that value chain, and making sure that projects sort of have some kind of lineage to those high level problems versus just all the bottoms up view of projects and issues.
So I've been a real advocate for process ownership, process governance, process control in our organization. We've had quite a bit of headcount growth, a lot of siloed, conflicting departments and business units that evolved. And so trying to put in some kind of governance and control system has actually enabled us to be more agile, because when a policy changes or a strategy changes, then the system can change with it versus 20 different chaotic things that are contradicting each other. And so I thought the presentation earlier from eBay, from Zach, captured how efficiency and innovation don't necessarily need to conflict with each other, and in some cases can support one another.
It's often said that leaders must model, but I think organizational excellence is really about culture, and I think if I'm not modeling what I'm expecting the organization to do, that it very clearly will fail. So I talked a lot about autonomy. If I immediately, when there's a problem, start pulling autonomy away from the teams, that sends a very clear signal that we're not serious about it. So for me, it's very much embracing the things that I'm expecting my organization to do and doing them myself in a very visible way.
So for me, one cultural and one execution. From a cultural perspective, I think the biggest enemy of agility and innovation is fear. Fear shows up a lot of different ways. So I really look hard for that. I think people have to take risks. People have to have ideas. People have to be willing to tackle a problem. People have to go outside of their zone. So for me, anything you can do to eradicate fear is a big one. And then the second, from an execution perspective, is I'm very interested in highly effective teams and task organized teams. So putting the right people together, not more people. putting people with the right expertise, the right passion, and really similar to what Kevin said, getting out of their way so they can execute.
Yeah, we have different challenges to everyone else, I think, on this panel, because we're a very small company. There's only 50 of us. We're in kind of startup mode, so I think my biggest, I like what Kevin says actually. I think it's all about being a role model, working really hard at the moment. You know, we're looking for funding, things like that. So trying to demonstrate to everyone else who's trying to point in the same direction that hard work does often lead to great results.
Priya, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself if you didn't see her this morning already.
Hi, my name is Priya Anand, and I lead global review operations for Google for trust and safety.
And the question was, what are 2 things that you do as a leader to enhance your organizational agility? On the spot. You just walked in.
2 things. I think thinking about that a little bit in our context is first creating a real sense of urgency around some of these things, because we weren't very agile in many ways, and it was okay to have something come up and kind of wait a few days to really think through this and then get back to folks. And sometimes that's totally fine and preferable, but sometimes in an operational world, in our world, you need to be able to respond really quickly to an escalation or to an issue that comes up. So I think that change starts from within. I think the other thing with agility for us we found is it's very hard to be agile if you don't have data and facts to back it up, at least in our context. So really investing in, one is the mindset, you've got to be agile, these are the situations we need to jump on. But one, I think, is the tool set. Like, do you really have the data? Do you have the skill sets on the team? Do you know what to do when you're in that situation where you need to be agile, where you need to ramp up operations, or you need to rapidly change course? And I think that took a while for us to get to. So I think you're really investing in people feeling like they know when to jump in, when to be agile, and when they find those situations, they actually know what to do and what tools we can bring to it.
Okay, so here's one that they didn't get to prepare for. So we all know that with innovation, to be good at innovating, you must be disciplined, right? But agility is often seen as that opposite of discipline in itself. So the question here is, how do you deal with the opposite end of discipline while maintaining that agility?
Well, in fact, I think that it's still discipline. The thing is that it's a different discipline. It's not it's not the normal discipline that we've been using for years and years. Because when you are agile, you also have to check the results. You also have to check the sprints. You also have to calibrate. The difference is that you don't do it at the end of the road, and you do it constantly and you do it consistently, which is discipline as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to maybe just a quick case study, short case study, but we did work with a satellite communications company, and the issue there on the innovation pipeline was they had a very traditional sort of stage gate, 27-step, blah, 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 and it was just too slow. It was just too slow, and it was very robust, but it wasn't really responsive to the market. So they wanted to actually say, well, how do we build this sort of separate experimentation machine where we can quickly learn? Again, lots of discipline. You could look at it, I guess, from the old school way and say, well, it's not as thorough, as robust, but it's really around trying to learn quickly so you can actually place more bets, get more information, and so on. So it's still a form of discipline, but it's a very different way. So I think you don't get too confused with the idea of something that's experimentation in a structured setting versus a long, robust process that may be actually completely inadequate for the market setting.
Yeah, I think this is kind of similar to the point I was making before. The absence of execution or the absence of discipline doesn't lead to innovation. A company can't innovate if it can't execute on its ideas. And I was thinking from your presentation earlier about the example of automobile manufacturers. We certainly don't want the workers on the line to innovate, but if the companies didn't innovate, then our mileage to the gallon would be terrible. We would be driving Model Ts with those big sticks instead of the steering wheels. And then I think of other companies where it's really important to have quality and standardization, like pharmaceuticals. I don't want them to mix up the chemical formula that's producing the thing that I'm supposed to take for whatever, because it could kill the patient. But I also need them to innovate, so curing new diseases. And so I really think these things need to go hand in hand to be effective. You can't have innovation and ideas without execution, but you also can't have standardized execution without new ideas, or companies would be ineffective.
I want to clear something up for those who didn't see my talk. It's not that folks on the line can't innovate. That's Kaizen, right? They innovate in how they do their work. What I was saying is that I didn't want them to innovate in like creating new automobile parts that weren't fit the cars and
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to misrepresent.
No, it's okay. Just for people who didn't see the talk. But yeah, I would argue as well that discipline and innovation are not two sides of a continuum. I think in order to be innovator, you have to be, and to be agile, you have to be disciplined. You have to know what you care about, know what you don't care about. And that's discipline. Not wasting your time on the unimportant things, really focusing on the important things. So to me, they're very much married to each other. They're not separate things.
Absolutely. Discipline doesn't have to be plodding or slow in any way. And I think, really being disciplined exactly as you laid out with the prioritization, with having your ducks in a row, I think can actually spur innovation because it clears the headspace for things that are truly important. Right? I think the other piece to this in terms of innovation is, there are a lot of disciplines to actually spark creativity. And so one of the things that we'll do is, we'll have a pit stop that's 3 hours, that's maybe 3 hours long.
Is that you? Is that me?
It's about 3 hours long, and we bring together everybody from all the different elements and all the different stakeholders, and it's a very focused amount of time. It's very disciplined in that there's a clear structure to it, but within that, innovation sort of reigns supreme, right? So I think people often think of it as a dichotomy, but I think it can free you up. And the day-to-day disciplines of knowing where your operations are, knowing where your performance is, and there's work that goes into that, but putting that work in means that you're not focused on the day-to-day because you know that it's being taken care of, and you can actually elevate and think about, well, how do I make this operation, how do I take it to the next level? But if we're not disciplined and we don't know where our metrics are and things are flying all over the place, it's really hard to get out of reactive mode. So I think they're combined.
Yeah, just add to that real quickly. I think one thing we've seen too, say in retail, you have kind of the operations and then operations development, where you're really trying to separate out the day-to-day operations where it has to be like a machine, and how do we continue to improve that? And I think that can also be helpful too, where you actually understand and put different roles.
Keep going, or okay. Yeah, I think we're doing the same thing for everybody. I think it also originates a bit of imprecise vocabulary. I talked about at eBay, and I think we heard it from other people as well. You just don't talk about process. There's a very small number of process geeks, I'm one of them, who want to engage in that. But the irony of great process means people don't know it's there. And the minute people experience a process and the friction associated with it is when you actually have to fix it. And it's where people have the association of I hate process because the only time I experience it is when I don't like it. Organizations, innovation, agility thrive through great processes. How do you make them so great that people don't know they're there?
Difficult to answer. Anything else? Really?
No. We can start you off on the next question.
Start at my end then.
And I know we said this last night at the awards, but Jim Collins says that great companies have strong core values, a relentless pursuit towards progress, right, and mechanisms that translate principles into actions. And so what are two mechanisms that you believe are essential to your business excellence agility? That's a mouthful.
Can I pass? What are two?
Two mechanisms.
Wow. No, I've drawn a blank on that. What are two
We can move
mechanisms?
down the line.
Yeah, I'll take a shot. Kind of reiterating what I talked about before. The one that's working great for us at eBay is go to the customer. It is so clarifying of anybody's point of view or anybody's agenda, and it's also I find myself making a mistake. I have a couple of people on my team that hold me relentlessly accountable. You didn't bring the customer in the room, and I just keep making a mistake. It's talking about a customer or measuring all customers is not being the customer. But once you can be the customer, it really neutralizes those things. pretty quickly. And then the other is make work visible. I've just never seen an exception where when people aren't actually seeing what's happening, that they don't naturally fix it. You can almost just get out of the way at that point. So when people are, I don't want to pass on bad work to somebody else. The minute that I see that I'm doing that, I'll tend to step up and deal with it. So just making things visible and not hidden. Those are two.
I think building upon what Zach said, I think once that work is visible for us, sometimes the work begins of then saying, well, how are we going to change it? Now that we know where all the waste is, or now that we know what we need to change, we need to bring together sometimes a very diverse set of folks to work together on something that frankly wasn't on their radar before. And so one of the mechanisms we use at Google is sort of this concept of OKRs, objectives and key results, and we set them for the year, we reset them every quarter. And it's really, really important to make sure that if you're working with people who are not on your team or you need to work with one another, that it's equally important to both of you, and this is on both of your plates. And that is a very deliberate process. We go back to that discipline question, but I think it forces a kind of alignment that otherwise is very hard to get. I think the other piece as well that helps us is in an environment as dynamic as ours, we pull everyone together once a quarter because we don't set strategy once a quarter, not at all, but it is really important for everyone to hear, okay, there's all this noise, but how is, if we're headed in this direction, is there anything that's changing? How have we done along that track, right? Because some operational improvements are fast and people get a high out of seeing the results. Some of them, maybe the results aren't visible, but there's a ton of really great progress that's being made. And so having that operational drumbeat where we get to see as an operation, what have we done, where are we relative to where we need to be at the end of the year, what's happened, what have we hit, what are we actually falling behind on and why. I think that piece really helps keep everybody focused for us.
I think Zach and Priya both articulated a lot that I would say. I would say what they would say, but then I'll add some new, which one things would be acceptance of failure as part of innovation. We don't punish, in my organizations, we don't punish failure, we accept failure as part of innovation. And in organizations I've worked in where failure is punished, you breed all the innovation out of the organization. And so I think that's one mechanism that I use. Teach that, make sure that's part of the culture. I think the other one goes back to voice of the customer, being customer focused. I call it empathy. And so the way we've done it, as I talked about in my organization, is we've literally put the customer into the teams, right? We've broken apart the functional silos so that the customer is in the team working with the developers. And that's been very valuable as well.
So I'm going to switch up the question on you because you did an excellent segue with failure. Often, in a lot of talks that I've had with other people, they see that the greatest success in their life often came from failure, right? Repeated failure on the same thing. And so what is the greatest challenge that you face in your organization trying to maintain that agility in your excellence program? What's the biggest challenge?
I'm sorry, I was just following the failure. Failures in my life and how to flip the question. So the greatest challenge that the organization is facing is
to keeping agile, right? Within that failure. So everybody's got these challenges that you face, and I would be willing to bet that every one of them is just slightly different based on many different factors such as culture and all the different things that we've addressed, right? So what is your greatest challenge? What is the thing that
I think our greatest challenge, which is probably pretty particular to us, is that we have extremely high turnover, and so the headcount turnover makes it very difficult to be agile or efficient or to have well-managed processes, and I think is one of the things that we've tried to design. Part of that is because our industry tends to have higher than average turnover, and then there's some particularities about our company that also drive some turnover, so that's a challenge.
I think actually, a big part of this, I think, is sort of destigmatizing failure, and I think, going back to my talk around, so one of the silos of growth is sort of the castle walls, where everyone starts to build around this notion of continuity versus the notion of change in transience. And I think if you accept the idea that your business is going to continue to change, it's really how do you shift shape and continually reinvent the organization, which means you're going to change that, you may want to start defunding some some businesses, even when they're very, very strong, because you're preparing for that commoditization and repurposing leadership and so on. So I think a couple things there. One very clear mechanism to kind of manage that failure, I think, is this capital allocation. I think sometimes that gets driven down to business unit level, and then that becomes more like a fief that people protect. Then the other thing too is just having a very frequent conversation and making sure that from the executive level you can sort of say destigmatize this. And so one of our clients, they every month they get together, work through all the top initiatives, continue to reprioritize those, and then it's less around an individual performance, more around what's working in the business, what we need to change, and that's that reshuffling, the regularity of that reshuffling really helps to underscore the fact we're going to change, and things that made sense a month ago won't make sense now. It's not a failure, it's just we've got to change. So I think it's what's the expectation around change, I think is important.
I think that there are many challenges that in fact they are connected. Probably the first one is to be humble enough to accept that we have failed. But one, that we have accepted the failure is to learn from it and applying that learning. Not only internally but also externally. Because at the end of the day it's about experiences. It's about the customer experience, but also it's about the employee experience. Because we have systems, we have tools, but those are only enablers to do what we want to do, or to get or to achieve the objective that we want to achieve. And we can have internally a very robust organization, but if we don't create a great experience, an exceptional experience for the customer, it's not going to work anyway. So I think it's at the end of the day, it's about learning and applying that learning.
Now you've got to listen to a little bit of them. So what I would like to do is ask if you have specific questions. I know you do because you're taking tons of notes here. So who's first?
She flipped right after you said something. I had a question about failure. So you said to destigmatize it, I think?
He said to
Someone said that.
destigmatize it, which
You
is
said
better than
something
what I
else.
said, yeah.
To accept it.
Yes.
And I was curious whether or not you set goals for failure.
Oh, that's a great question. No.
Because everything's database, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. No, we don't. That's a good idea, actually.
Like a certain percentage? Or?
I think what I like doing, what other companies have done that I know, is they give awards for best failure, like best failure of the quarter, or you took the site down, yeah, you get an award. If you give an award for taking the site down, that means it's not a bad thing to do that, as long as you don't do it twice. That means you're trying something new. But yeah,
What is the best, most learning, or what is the best failure?
I think it's most learning.
Yeah.
I think the whole point of failure is that you learn, and that's why you fail, is because you're trying something new, and by failing, you've learned something new, and then you can make progress, right? So that's the important part of the failure. So I like rewarding the best learning, I guess, rather than saying we should fail 20% of the time.
Have you guys heard of the failure resume?
Just a thought on that though, is on the failure question. And we had an executive who, they're trying to launch something here, and he basically said to the team, "You're going to fail this many times before this launches." And to some, it was very sort of off-putting. It's like, we're trying really hard here, and this does this. But to others, it was actually permission to say, you're not going to get this right. It's going to take this many iterations before we really nail this, but it's okay. Launch and iterate, right? So it depends on how you see it, right? So I think failure in the mode of, it's not going to hit perfectly right, but you launched it. This doesn't apply to everything, but in some situations you need to get something up and running. It is going to fail, and when you fail, let's pick it up and make it better, right? So I think it really depends, and it can be a very powerful tool if you use it, like you just described.
There's a great, I don't want to steal time, but there's a great quote that I love around this, which comes from Mikael Krantz, who's the architect at Spotify. And one of the things he said, he used to say is, we want to be a internal combustion engine, not a fuel-air bomb. Lots of small controlled explosions propelling us in a generally okay direction, not a massive explosion taking out half the city. But it's,
So further expansion of the bullets and cannonballs idea,
I
right?
make him super embarrassed as a Swede. Yeah.
Other questions?
I have one
Okay.
very, very practical question. So in my company, working at Amadeus, there are lots of talks around which agile model to go for in development teams, and lots of talks around Spotify model versus safe model. I'm just wondering if you've had exposure to those two models and what your preference would be, because what we're hearing is that safe model is very restrictive. A lot of processes involved, and as I've heard many people talk today, it's not typically the word that engineers like to hear. So just curious if you've had exposure to those two on the first side.
Uh-oh.
I worked at Spotify for 3 years, so well, you know my preference.
Well, I don't know if you like my answer. I think the model is one thing, and then there's your company. And the wisdom's making it work there. I've seen, even inside eBay today, we have many cousins of Agile going on. We don't actually dictate it. eBay's quite agnostic around method, actually. My personal experience is the closer that you get, the people who are, whether they're a customer or a user or whatever else, with the people who are building, that's the winning formula. So how do you achieve that?
I agree with Zach. I think it really just depends on how you're able to adapt it. And, there's teams that work well with both. There's teams that I think mostly work with adaptations. So I think it really just depends.
Yeah, just want to add that probably what worked for other companies is not necessarily going to work for your company. You have to look at the two models and take what is the best for your own company.
Hey, I'm Andrew with Walmart. So what I've noticed at my company is fairly rigid structure, and I think Zach, you mentioned one of the key tenets is kind of being able to be yourself, to speak up in meetings and kind of call out biases and different things like that. How do you, as a leader, kind of encourage more of that kind of thinking, instead of looking to the maybe people with the most tenure in the room and saying, what are they going to say, and waiting for them to speak up? Speak up based on your own judgment.
Or you are the most tenured people in the room then, huh?
I think therein lies the challenge sometimes, right? Because you might have a very open mindset, but that's not necessarily that someone on your global team, where there's distance, there's cultural, different cultural tendencies might feel that way. Right? So I think, you always know on your team who's going to speak up, and it's really valuable, and that's great. But I think one of the things I found in my team is I was getting a little bit of an echo chamber, where we had the same people would speak up, and everybody liked it because we all sort of thought similarly, and we started getting new people on the team, and people were a little bit quiet. And so I tried this thing of saying, we're going to actually just go around the table, and everybody's going to share what they have to share about it. I don't actually talk about it at all during that. No, yes, no, just sort of listening. And I think that sort of helps a lot. And then sometimes calling out the most junior person in the room, and maybe sometimes giving them a heads up, okay, I'm going to call on you for this, because sometimes it can be a little bit too much if you just put someone on the spot. I think it tells people that you're really invested in them, and that you really care about them enough to catch it maybe during a break or something and say, hey, I'm going to call on you because I think you have some good points and I want everybody to hear it. And then just creating that space for folks, and just leading by example, right? And that can help.
Another thing I've done that's kind of consistent with what you're saying is if you as the senior person have a different view than the junior person, if you are aware of that view, try to take the junior person's view and say, this is what I understand you might be thinking or other people are thinking, and then argue the points. And for these reasons and all that, I just had a call after my presentation today where I had that exact same case, and one of the guys on the team thought we should do something differently. And I said, so I understand there's an idea to do something differently, and these are the reasons why, and this is the approach. I completely disagreed with all that, but I laid it out and said, did I say that correctly? And he's like, yeah, I made a better representation for his argument than he made. And so, or if somebody's not in the meeting, bringing up their concerns in a genuine kind of way, saying, hey, this guy's not here, but he raised this concern. Do other people have that concern? So you're trying to solicit alternative points of view in multiple ways. So I think one way is to go around and directly solicit people, but other ways are just to create the space or to give hearing to those different views.
You know, my experience, I think, is actually if you work in generally in sort of under-resourced environments, people get pulled in pretty quickly. So, you know, when I've been working in organizations where they have small teams with quite aggressive deadlines, you know, everyone's very quickly pulled into a very collaborative environment, just by its nature. So I think it's a little bit of maybe a structural issue. If your norm is large meetings, that those dynamics start to exist. If you're working in a team of 3, people very quickly going to be pulling in your expertise, and I think it's a lot more productive in that sense.
One more note on that, and I'm not one of the speakers, but we use key influencers. We try to manage them up front. So you identify who these people are that are going to dominate the conversation, like you guys said. Identify them and give them a heads up in the meeting, before the meeting. You're going to go last. Because that way the people that are afraid to speak up get their point out first before someone comes in and dominates them. So we often do that technique. All right, well, we are out of time, but if you guys want to ask them more questions, you're welcome to do that afterward, but thank you. Thanks, everyone.